Early on in 2020, I bought three books: a monograph on Tony Ray Jones, Marketa Luskakova's By the Sea, and Martin Parr's The Last Resort. The copy of The Last Resort is a 2009 reprint by Dewey Lewis, the original being published in 1986 by Promenade Press. The other two photo books, Tony Ray Jones and By the Sea, were published by RRB Photobooks in 2019. While Parr and Luskakova's photo books deal exclusively with being by the seaside, the photo book around Ray Jones's work of England tackles a broader spectrum of being English. Martin Parr was the only one to publish his photo book at the time of completing the work. The photographs of Ray Jones were taken in the 1960s, Luskakova in the 1970s, and Parr in the 1980s. Taken together, they span a monumental change in attitudes, culture, and consumerism, creating for me an undeniable nostalgia for a time left behind, a time before the headlong rush for convenience and digital utopia took over our lives. Martin Parr and Tony Ray Jones's work utilized the well-worn tropes of class and a stereotypical standpoint that amplifies such divisions, albeit that Ray Jones's operates with a far greater empathy for his subject. Parr's The Last Resort is unapologetic exploitation, heightened by the consistent use of flash photography. It is also the most remarkable, and when I first saw his work in the 1980s, it marked a wholly different approach to photography as an artistic endeavor. His is a classic piece of neoliberal documentation that was always going to appeal to the art world cognoscenti. Parr knew exactly what he was doing. On the whole, photographers act with a deliberate intent, and his work is a ruthless portrayal of people who appear to holiday with no purpose, find little room to be joyful, and languish in a constantly wrecked landscape of rubbish and rubbish bins. It's a reality of his own making, pierced through with a surgical dissection of the flashbulb, burrowing as it does into every last detail and sweaty pore. There is humour in spades and buckets, but it is a humour that is reserved for the intellect of the viewer and not the viewed. As with Parr's subsequent work, he was cocking a snoop at his subject, and the baying British, with their love affair of throwing scorn on others, could not get enough of it, and in so doing he was able to brand his own legacy deep into the British psyche. Marketa Luskakova's By the Sea is the more poetical of the three books, the most constant in terms of understanding and involvement. Nearly all her images exude enjoyment, which after all is the reason we venture to the seaside. She doesn't seem to have any agenda or the need to create a platform to explore the British character. As a Czech and a true outsider, she sees people for who they are, not as an exemplar of who they may be. Where there is a sensibility lacking in both Parr and Ray Jones, Luskakova offers a nurturing eye unencumbered by a judgment of what she is witnessing. I love this work for all the posturing and theatre within the people she photographs and the generosity of spirit in which she enables them to perform. By the Sea is a celebration of humanity as an expression of the individual. The DIY nature of clothes and of child's play, Sunday shoes for the beach, your own sense of propriety. There's a bemused innocence between photographer and subject. Things move, children play, they smile with excitement on receiving candy floss. There are knitted jumpers instead of fitted Nike, suit jackets instead of shell suits, character of dress instead of branded conformity. The children wear school regulation swimming trunks and costumes, and the adults wear what they would have worn had they been doing elsewhere. They giggle, hold hands, squat in the sand, show off their grandchildren, roam freely. There's a pride in being where they are. This is no panopticon for the voyeur. By the Sea is a vast space of uncluttered simplicity, where nothing stands between you, the viewer, and the people presented. It's important to go back to Tony Ray Jones. He began a change of artistic temperament that swept in from America. In the 1960s, Britain was a relative backwater to what was taking place in the world of photography. A unique cultural snobbery was to ensure that photography as an artistic medium wasn't going to rub shoulders equally in Britain with fine art, at least until the start of the 21st century. But Ray Jones was a pioneer, and his quick and meticulous eye for detail and the obvious enjoyment in what he was witnessing is evident in his work. His is not a cruel eye, but an abiding frankness, combined with a sophisticated spatial choreography of the English and their quirky idioms. For Ray Jones, the Seaside was the perfect platform for observing the British character. As Liz Joby writes in the essay accompanying the book, this is where he found the configurations of stoicism, pathos, humour and snobbery, eccentricity and gentleness that he wanted to come through in his pictures. It was where people forgot themselves and lost their inhibitions, or maintained them so strangely that they made typical studies of the English at leisure. To place oneself as a photographer down by the seaside is to realize those who have been here before. When I look at my own work with Great Yarmouth from between 2017 to 2020, I see an isolation and a self-awareness that was not in existence in the world of Ray Jones, Luskakova, or Parr. I can't decide whether the change is in the photographic approach, an apathy of existence, or that photography is so ubiquitous with the act of being photographed and photographing with the mobile phone that we have become a verisimilitude of our own expectations, relentlessly connected to everything in an instant replay, as if trapped in a soluble addiction, an online kaleidoscope of the everything not here. I saw a forlorn vacancy and dislocation in the act of holidaying that it had me wondering. I also saw genuine enjoyment that filled me with the realization that the undeniable nostalgia I spoke of at the beginning is set to return. As to what photography makes of it, well, who knows?